The massive alien ship hung in space above Earth like a dark metal moon. Its surface gleamed with strange lights that pulsed in patterns no human could understand. On Luna Command, the military base built inside Earth's moon, Admiral Tae-min stared at the viewing screen with cold eyes. "How big is it?" he asked his aide. 15 kilometers long, sir. Maybe more. Our sensors can barely measure it properly." Tae-min nodded slowly. He had gray hair and deep lines around his eyes from years of military service. Today, those lines seemed deeper than ever. The alien ship had arrived 3 hours ago, appearing out of nowhere, with technology that made human space travel look like children playing with toy boats. Captain Sora stood beside him, her young face serious. At 28, she was the youngest fleet captain in Earth Defense Coalition history. Her black hair was pulled back in a tight military style, and her dark eyes never stopped moving as she studied the alien vessel. "They're asking for a meeting," reported Communications Officer Jae-ho from his station. "They want to send someone over to talk." "Let them come," Tae-min said, "but keep all weapons ready." "Sir, our weapons probably won't even scratch that thing," Sora said quietly. "I know, but we'll die fighting if we have to." The alien shuttle was small compared to the mothership, but it still dwarfed any human spacecraft. It landed in Luna, Command's main docking bay, with technology that seemed to ignore gravity completely. The shuttle simply floated down and settled on the landing pad without any visible engines or thrusters. Tae-min and Sora waited in the main conference room with a full honor guard. 20 Earth Defense Coalition soldiers stood at attention, their weapons ready. The room's walls showed views of Earth turning slowly below them, blue and green and beautiful. The alien that entered the room was nothing like what humans had imagined. It stood 3 meters tall and looked like it was made of living crystal. Its body reflected light in rainbow patterns, and its face had no features humans could recognize. When it spoke, the words came from a small device floating beside it. I am Negotiator Prime of the Valkyrie species. I speak for the Galactic Confederation." Tae-min stepped forward. "I am Admiral Tae-min of the Earth Defense Coalition. Welcome to Luna Command." The crystal alien made a sound like breaking glass. The translator device said, "I do not come in friendship. I come with demands." Sora felt her hand move toward her weapon, but she controlled herself. The alien continued speaking. "Your species has spread beyond your home world without permission. You have built colonies and mining stations in 12 star systems. This violates galactic law." "We didn't know there was a galactic law," Tae-min said carefully. "Ignorance is not an excuse. The Galactic Confederation has ruled this galaxy for 10,000 years. All species must follow our laws or face punishment." The alien's crystal body flashed with angry red light. "Your species will submit to Confederation authority immediately. You will dismantle all military forces. You will allow us to catalog your genetic structure and relocate your population to approved colony worlds. You will serve the Confederation as workers and soldiers." Tae-min's face showed no emotion, but Sora could see the anger in his eyes. "And if we refuse, then your species will be eliminated. We have done this before with races that would not obey. Your choice is simple: serve or die." The alien gestured toward the viewing screen showing Earth. "You have 72 standard hours to decide. If you do not surrender by then, we will destroy every human world and station. Your species will be extinct within 1 week." Sora stepped forward. "How many ships do you have?" The alien's translator made a sound like laughter. "More than you can imagine, human child. The Confederation includes 12 species and thousands of worlds. Your entire military could not defeat a single one of our battle groups. Then why give us time to think about it? Sora asked. Why not just attack now? Because some Confederation members enjoy watching lesser species realize their hopelessness. It amuses them. Taemin's hands clenched into fists, but his voice stayed calm. We will consider your offer and give you our answer in 72 hours. You will give us your surrender in 72 hours, the alien corrected. There is only one acceptable answer. The crystal being turned and walked out of the room without another word. Its shuttle lifted off and returned to the massive ship waiting in orbit. When they were alone, Sora turned to Taemin. Sir, what are we going to do? They're right about one thing. Our whole fleet together couldn't fight that one ship, let alone thousands. Taemin walked to the viewing screen and stared at Earth. Maybe, but we have something they don't know about. What? Do you mean? 30 years ago, we sent 50,000 colonists into deep space, the Lost Fleet. Everyone thinks they died out there in the void. Sora frowned. They did die, didn't they? We never heard from them again. We never heard from them on normal channels. Taemin turned around and Sora saw something in his eyes she had never seen before. Hope. But we did leave them a way to contact us in an emergency. Taemin walked to a special communications console that Sora had never seen used. It was covered in warning labels and required 2 keys to activate. Taemin pulled a chain from around his neck, revealing 1 key. He looked at Sora. The other key is in the President's safe on Earth, but as Fleet Commander I have emergency authorization to use this system if Earth faces extinction. He pressed his thumb to a scanner, spoke his authorization code, and the console came to life. Strange symbols appeared on the screen, and the machine began sending a signal toward the edge of the solar system. What are you doing? Sora asked. Taemin typed a short message into the console. The words appeared on the screen. The compact is called. The debt is owed. Come home. I'm calling in a debt, Taemin said as he sent the message. 30 years. Ago, when the Lost Fleet left, they made a promise. If Earth ever faced destruction, they would return to help us. But, sir, they're probably all dead. And even if they're not, 50,000 colonists can't fight the entire Galactic Confederation. Taemin smiled for the first time in hours. Maybe not, but those 50,000 colonists had 30 years to prepare, and they found something out there in the deep space between galaxies. Something the Confederation thought was gone forever. The HFY message finished sending, and the console shut down. Somewhere in the darkness beyond the outer planets, ancient receivers were waking up. In the deep void where light took years to travel between stars, ships that had been waiting for decades began to move. Now we wait, Taemin said, and we pray that our lost children remember their promise to come home. 30 years ago, Earth was dying. Not from war or disease, but from too many people and too little space. The cities stretched from horizon to horizon, and the oceans were filled with floating farms and factories, even with colonies on Mars. And the moons of Jupiter, there were still 12 billion humans with nowhere to go. Captain Hyun-woo stood on the bridge of the colony ship New Dawn and watched Earth shrink behind them. He was 35 years old then, with kind eyes and a calm voice that made people trust him. Today was the last time he would ever see his home world. All ships report ready for long-range jump, said his communications officer. Hyun-woo looked at the fleet around them. 50 massive colony ships, each carrying 1,000 people in deep sleep, 20 military escort vessels, supply ships and construction ships and science vessels, everything they needed to build a new world somewhere in the dark between the stars. "Take us out," he ordered. The fleet jumped to faster-than-light speed and left the solar system behind. Their destination was a region of space where long-range probes had found planets that might support human life. It would take them 2 years to get there, traveling through empty space where no human had ever gone. Da-Yun was 24 years, old and fresh from the engineering academy. She had volunteered for the colony mission because she wanted to see new worlds and help build humanity's future. Her parents had cried when she left, knowing they would never see her again. But Da-Eun had dreams of cities floating in alien skies and children playing under foreign suns. "The jump drive is working perfectly," she reported to Chief Engineer Wu Jin. "All systems are stable." "Good. We have a long journey ahead of us." For 6 months, everything went according to plan. The fleet traveled through the void between stars, following routes mapped by robot probes. The colonists slept in their pods while the crew kept watch, monitoring systems and plotting courses toward their new home. Then they found the graveyard. It appeared on their sensors like a cloud of metal debris, but as they got closer, they realized what they were seeing: ships, thousands of them, maybe millions, floating dead in the emptiness between galaxies. Some were the size of Earth's cities. Others were small fighters no bigger than shuttles. "Sir, these ships are ancient," reported Science Officer Hai Wan. "Our dating equipment says they're at least 50,000 years old." Captain Hyun Woo stared at the viewing screen. The dead ships stretched as far as their sensors could reach. "Any idea who built them?" "No, sir. The technology is completely unknown. But, sir, there's something else. These ships weren't just abandoned. They were destroyed in battle. The fleet slowed down as they entered the graveyard. Every ship was damaged by weapons that had melted metal and twisted space itself. Whatever had happened here was a war beyond anything humans could imagine." "Captain, we're picking up a signal," Da-Yun called from her station. "It's coming from that big ship in the center of the field." The signal was unlike anything in human technology. It seemed to speak directly to their minds rather than their ears. Images flashed through their thoughts: star maps, mathematical equations, and pictures of beings that looked like living light. Engineer Da-Eun was the first to understand. "Sir, I think this is some kind of automatic message. The ship's computer is still working after all these years." They sent a shuttle to investigate the source of the signal. Da-Eun volunteered to go with the boarding party. The ancient ship was built from materials that seemed to bend light around them. The corridors were filled with floating symbols that glowed with their own inner fire. In the ship's central chamber, they found something impossible: a crystalline structure that pulsed with energy, containing the preserved consciousness of the ship's last captain. When Da-Eun touched it, knowledge flooded into her mind. The beings who built these ships called themselves the predecessors. They had ruled the galaxy for millions of years, exploring every star and protecting smaller species from harm. They believed in freedom and cooperation rather than conquest and control. But then came the Confederation. 12 species that worked together to destroy anyone who would not submit to their rule. They were led by the Valakri, beings of living crystal, who saw other life forms as tools to be used or obstacles to be removed. The predecessors tried to resist, but they were outnumbered. The final battle lasted for centuries and left entire star systems destroyed. In the end, the predecessors chose to hide their knowledge rather than let it be captured. They built secret storage sites throughout the galaxy and waited for someone worthy to find them. "The Confederation thinks we're extinct," the crystal consciousness told Da'un. "But we prepared for this day. Someone would come who could carry on our work." When Da'un returned to the fleet, she brought more than just information. The predecessor technology was still active, and it wanted to help. The ancient ships began to repair themselves and offer their secrets to the human colonists. Captain Hyun-woo faced the hardest decision of his life. They could continue to their planned destination and build a normal colony, or they could stay here and learn from the predecessors, becoming something more than human in order to carry on the fight against tyranny. "The Confederation will find Earth eventually," said the crystal consciousness. "When they do, your people will face the same choice we did: submit or die." The colonists voted. Out of 50,000 people, 48,000 chose to stay. They would become the guardians of the void, learning predecessor technology and preparing for the day when Earth needed them. Da'un was among the first to undergo the transformation. The predecessor technology changed her body and mind, letting her interface directly with their ships and computers. She learned to think in mathematical languages that described the fundamental structure of reality. Others changed in different ways. Some became navigators who could see through multiple dimensions at once. Others became engineers who could build ships from pure energy. Captain Hyun-woo became something like a living computer, able to coordinate entire fleets with the power of his transformed mind. The process was not easy. Many who tried the transformation died. Others went insane from the vast knowledge flowing into their minds. But those who survived became something the galaxy had not seen for 50,000 years, the inheritors of predecessor power. They built a new kind of fleet, ships that could exist in several dimensions at once, traveling through space in ways that made faster-than-light speed look slow. They learned to use gravity as a weapon and time as a shield. Most importantly, they learned patience. For 30 years, they waited in the void between galaxies. They built their strength and mastered technologies that the Confederation thought were lost forever. They raised children who could navigate through folded space-time and see across infinite distances. But they never forgot their promise to Earth. When the call came, they would return home, and they would bring with them the power to challenge an empire that had ruled for 10,000 years. The message from Admiral Taemin reached them as they were conducting training exercises near a dead star. The words appeared on their screens in letters of fire. "The compact is called. The debt is owed. Come home." Captain Hyun-woo, now more machine than man, stood on the bridge of his flagship Voidwalker. His body was integrated with predecessor technology, and his mind could process information at superhuman speeds. When he smiled, energy crackled around his transformed features. "It's time," he said to his crew. "Humanity calls us home." The Black Armada began to move through dimensions that had no names, racing toward Earth faster than light itself could travel. The children of the void were coming home, and they brought with them the power of ancient gods. More alien ships arrived every hour. They came through portals that tore open space itself, emerging from hyperspace in formations that blotted out the stars. Captain So-Ra watched from Luna Command as the enemy fleet grew larger and more terrifying. "Current count is over 3,000 ships," reported sensor operator Jae-ho. His voice was steady, but So-Ra could see the fear in his eyes. "And more. Keep coming." The alien vessels were unlike anything in human imagination. The Valakri ships looked like floating crystal cathedrals. their geometric surfaces bending light into rainbow patterns. When they moved, space itself seemed to warp around them, creating ripples that made nearby stars flicker and dance. The hegemony fleet was different, but equally frightening. Their ships looked alive, with hulls that pulsed like beating hearts and weapon systems that writhed like tentacles. Admiral Veltar commanded these bioships from a vessel that resembled a massive sea creature swimming through the void. The organic ships are growing, reported Science Officer Min Ho from his station, deep in Luna Command's research levels. I mean literally growing. They're adding new sections to themselves as we watch. Sora frowned. Growing how? They seem to be converting space dust and cosmic radiation into new hull material. It's like they're eating the vacuum of space and turning it into armor. The third major fleet belonged to the Kavari, an insectoid species that flew in perfect swarms. Their ships were small but numbered in the tens of thousands. They moved together like schools of fish, creating patterns that hurt human eyes to look at directly. Admiral Taemin stood in the command center, studying reports from across the solar system. Earth's entire military had been mobilized, but their 300 ships looked pathetic compared to the alien Armada. "Sir, the President is calling for a full evacuation of Earth," said Communications Officer Sung Ho. "The transport ships are already loading civilians." "Where will they go?" Taemin asked. "The aliens control hyperspace. They can follow our ships anywhere in the galaxy. The President thinks maybe we can negotiate. Give them some of our territory in exchange for letting Earth survive." Taemin shook his head. "You heard what their negotiator said. They want everything. Total surrender or total destruction." Sora joined them at the tactical display. "What about your message, sir? Any response from the lost fleet?" "Nothing yet. But if they're coming, they'll need time to reach us. The void between galaxies is vast." On the main viewing screen, they watched the alien commander's ship take position directly above Earth. Supreme Commander Kithara of the Valakri had arrived in a vessel that dwarfed even the other alien ships. It was 15 kilometers of crystalline spires and floating energy rings, beautiful and terrible like a work of art designed by gods of war. "They're positioning orbital bombardment platforms," reported Tactical Officer Yoon-ji. 24 stations, in geosynchronous orbit around Earth. Each one could level a continent. The aliens were taking their time, making sure humanity understood the hopelessness of resistance. Every hour brought new demonstrations of their power. Kavari swarms performed impossible maneuvers that violated the laws of physics as humans understood them. Hegemony bioships grew new weapons that could fire through multiple dimensions. Valkyrie crystal ships created gravity wells that bent space into knots. Down on Earth, the evacuation continued in panic and chaos. The transport ships could only carry a few million people, leaving billions behind. In the underground bunkers of New Seoul, Engineer Minho worked frantically on equipment left behind by the lost fleet 30 years ago. His grandfather had been the fleet's chief scientist before they disappeared into the void. Minho had grown up hearing stories about the strange devices they had discovered in their exploration of dead space. Most people thought the stories were just old man's fantasies, but Minho had found the hidden laboratory. The equipment was unlike anything in current human technology. Computers that seemed to operate on principles beyond normal physics. Communication devices that could reach across impossible distances instantly. Sensors that could detect things existing in parallel dimensions. "Come on," Minho whispered as he worked on the quantum communication array. "If you're really out there, grandfather, Now would be a good time to call home. The device hummed to life, its crystal components glowing with inner fire. For a moment, Minho thought he heard something, like voices speaking in a language made of mathematics and starlight. Then the signal faded, leaving only empty static. Back on Luna Command, the deadline was approaching fast. Admiral Tae Min received constant updates from Earth Defense Coalition bases throughout the solar system. Every report was the same. They were outnumbered, outgunned, and facing technology they could not understand or fight. "Sir, we're receiving a transmission from the alien command ship," reported Sung Ho. Supreme Commander Cathara appeared on the main screen, her crystalline form reflecting the light of distant stars. When she spoke, her voice sounded like breaking glass and ringing bells. "Humans of Earth, your time of decision has arrived. You have 1 hour to transmit your unconditional surrender. If you do not comply, we will begin the destruction of your homeworld." The transmission cut off, leaving the command center in silence. Sora looked around at the faces of her fellow officers. Some showed fear, others anger, but all of them showed determination. "Orders, sir?" she asked. Tae Min straightened his uniform and walked to the communications station. "Open a channel to all ships in the solar system, all Earth Defense Coalition vessels, all civilian transports, all orbital stations." When the channel was ready, he began to speak. "This is Admiral Tae Min to all human forces. In 1 hour, the aliens will attack. We cannot match their numbers or their technology. Many of us will die today." He paused, looking out at Earth turning slowly below them. "But we will not surrender. We will not kneel to tyrants who demand our freedom and our dignity. We will fight, because that is what humans do when faced with impossible odds." Throughout the solar system, human crews prepared for battle. Weapons were charged, shields were raised, and last messages were sent to loved ones. They knew they could not win, but they would make the aliens pay for every human life. "Alien ships are powering weapons," reported J-Ho. "Energy readings are off the scale." That was when the deep space sensors detected something impossible. Signatures appearing at the very edge of the solar system, emerging from directions that should contain only empty void. "Sir, I'm reading multiple contacts," Yunji called out, her voice filled with confusion. "They're not coming from normal space. They're just appearing out of nowhere." Sora rushed to the sensor station. "How many contacts?" "I count 57. "Ships. But the readings don't make sense. They're showing up on gravitational sensors, but not on electromagnetic. It's like they're only partially here." Admiral Tae Min smiled for the first time in days. "Open a channel on the emergency frequency, the one we used for the lost fleet." The response came immediately, in a voice that sounded almost human but carried harmonics that made reality shiver around the edges. "Earth Command, this is Admiral Hyunwoo of the Black Armada. We have received your call and we are coming home. Hold position and prepare for dimensional emergence." The alien fleet detected the newcomers and began to turn their massive guns toward the edge of the solar system. But as they watched, the human ships simply stepped sideways through space and vanished from normal sensors entirely. Supreme Commander Cathara's voice echoed across all frequencies. "What are these ships? They do not match any known human technology." Admiral Tae Min opened a general broadcast to the entire alien fleet. "Those are our lost children, coming home to defend their family. You wanted to see what happens when you threaten humanity. Now you'll find out." The Black Armada emerged from the void like ghosts becoming solid. Their ships appeared first as shadows against the stars, then as dark forms that seemed to absorb light itself. The hulls were black as deep space, covered in patterns that hurt to look at directly. Admiral Hyun Woo stood on the bridge of his flagship Void Walker, but he was no longer entirely human. 30 years of integration with predecessor technology had changed him into something new. His skin had a metallic sheen, and his eyes glowed with inner fire. Cables and neural interfaces connected his body directly to the ship's systems, making him part of the vessel itself. "Sir, we have visual contact with Earth," reported Navigator Prime Dayun. She had changed even more than Hyunwoo. Her body seemed to flicker between dimensions, and when she spoke, her voice echoed from places that should not exist. "The Confederation fleet is larger than we expected." "How many ships?" Hyunwoo asked, his transformed mind processing information. "At superhuman speeds. Over 3,000 combat vessels, 12 different species. They have Earth completely surrounded." Hyunwoo smiled, energy crackling around his modified features. "Then they've made the same mistake the Confederation always makes. They think numbers matter more than knowledge." The Black Armada moved through space in ways that made the alien fleet's sensors scream warnings. The human ships didn't travel in straight lines like normal vessels. Instead, they folded space around themselves, taking shortcuts through dimensions that existed between the normal three. Captain Sora watched from Luna Command as the returning fleet approached Earth. "Sir, I'm trying to count their ships, but the numbers keep changing. Sometimes I see 50 vessels, sometimes 100. They're probably existing in multiple dimensions at once," said Science Officer Min Ho. "My grandfather's notes mention something called quantum superposition. They might be in several places simultaneously until they choose to become solid." Admiral Taemin studied the tactical display with growing hope. "Can you establish communication with them?" "Already done, sir," reported Communications Officer Sung Ho. "Admiral Hyun Woo is requesting permission to engage the enemy fleet. Tell him permission granted, and tell him welcome home." The Confederation fleet detected the approaching humans and immediately dismissed them as a threat. Supreme Commander Kithara of the Valakri issued orders to her entire armada. 50 human ships against 3,000 Confederation vessels. Destroy them quickly, then proceed with the bombardment of Earth. Admiral Veltar of the Hegemony deployed his bioships in a hunting formation. "My creatures are hungry for battle. These humans will make a fine appetizer before we consume their homeworld." The Kavari swarms moved like living clouds, their thousands of small ships creating geometric patterns that would confuse and overwhelm any normal opponent. Commander Zith-Ak of the insectoid species clicked his mandibles in anticipation. Realm. Humans returned to die with their nest mates. How touching. But when the battle began, nothing happened, as the aliens expected. The lead Valakri crystal ships fired their primary weapons, beams of pure energy that could slice through planet-sized asteroids. The beams struck the Black Armada's flagship and passed right through it without causing any damage. "Impossible," breathed Supreme Commander Kithara. "Our weapons hit nothing but vacuum." Navigator Da-Un piloted her ship Dimension Walker through the Confederation battle line, phasing in and out of normal space like a dolphin jumping through waves. When Hegemony bioships tried to grab her with their organic tentacles, they found themselves clutching empty space. "Admiral, the humans are using some form of dimensional shifting," reported Veltar's science officer. They exist in parallel, space-time streams. Then adapt our weapons to fire into those streams, Veltar snarled. But the bioships found that their adaptive weapons could not lock onto targets that existed in multiple realities at once. When they fired into one dimension, the human ships simply stepped into another. The Kavari swarms tried their coordinated attack patterns, surrounding individual Black Armada vessels with thousands of fighters. But the human ships responded by creating localized gravity wells that trapped the alien fighters in slow-motion bubbles of compressed time. Captain Sora watched the battle with amazement. They're not just fighting the aliens, they're rewriting the rules of physics around them. Engineer Minho studied the sensor readings with growing excitement. Look at these energy signatures. They're not using normal weapons at all. They're manipulating the fundamental forces of the universe. On the Void Walker, Admiral Hyun-woo coordinated his fleet through direct neural interface. His consciousness expanded across multiple dimensions, allowing him to see the battle from impossible perspectives. He could observe the enemy fleet's movements before they happened, predict their strategies before they formed them. Dai-Yun, take your squadron through the 7th dimensional fold and hit their command ship from below normal space, he ordered. Acknowledged. Folding space in 3, 2, 1. Navigator Dai-Yun's ships vanished from normal sensors and reappeared inside the Valkyrie formation, emerging from directions that should not exist. Their weapons fired bursts of crystallized time that aged enemy hulls by centuries in seconds. B. Confederation fleet found itself fighting an enemy that could attack from any direction, including directions that had no names in any language. When they tried to retreat into hyperspace, they discovered that the Black Armada had somehow sealed the dimensional exits. "Sir, our hyperspace drives are not responding," reported a panicked Valkyrie officer to Supreme Commander Cathera. "The humans have created some kind of dimensional barrier." Cathera's crystalline form flashed with angry light. "That is impossible. No known technology can prevent hyperspace travel." "Apparently their technology can," the officer replied. Admiral Veltar attempted to coordinate a joint attack with all 3 Confederation fleets, but found that his communications were being intercepted and decoded in real time. When he gave orders to his bioships, the human fleet seemed to know his plans before his own captains did. "How are they reading our encrypted communications?" he demanded. His science officer checked her instruments with shaking hands. "Sir, I think they're intercepting our thoughts directly. Some of their crew members seem to exist partially in quantum consciousness streams." The battle raged across multiple dimensions simultaneously. Human ships that took damage in normal space simply shifted into parallel realities where they were undamaged. When alien weapons managed to hit them, the Black Armada vessels absorbed the energy and converted it into fuel for their own systems. Engineer Minho watched his grandfather's equipment come alive as the battle progressed. The old devices were responding to signals from the Black Armada, downloading information about technologies that had been lost for 50,000 years. "Sir, I'm receiving technical data from the returning fleet," he reported to Admiral Tae-min. "They're teaching us how to upgrade our own ships with predecessor technology." "Do it," Tae-min ordered. "Any advantage we can get." Throughout Earth's orbital defenses, human technology began to change and evolve. Ship hulls strengthened with quantum-bonded armor. Weapon systems learned to fire through folded space. Engines discovered how to skip across dimensional boundaries. Captain Sora felt her ship Earth's Pride transform around her as predecessor upgrades integrated with human engineering. Her tactical display showed information in mathematical languages she somehow understood, and her weapons could now target enemies existing in parallel realities. "This is incredible," she breathed. "We're becoming something more than human." The Confederation fleet realized they were not fighting the same species that had built primitive rockets and metal ships. These humans had inherited the power of the ancient predecessors, the race that had once challenged the Confederation's dominance of the galaxy. Supreme Commander Kithara transmitted an emergency message to the Confederation homeworlds. "We need immediate reinforcements. The humans have acquired predecessor technology. Repeat, the predecessor legacy has returned." But even as she sent the message, she knew help would arrive too late. The Black Armada was demonstrating powers that the Confederation thought had been destroyed forever, wielding weapons that could reshape reality itself. The children of the Void had come home, and they brought with them the accumulated vengeance of every species the Confederation had destroyed across 10,000 years of galactic tyranny. Engineer Minho stared at his instruments in amazement as data flowed from the Black Armada into Earth's defense systems. The information came in streams of pure mathematics that somehow made perfect sense to his enhanced mind. His grandfather's hidden laboratory had activated completely, revealing technologies that seemed to operate on principles beyond normal physics. "Sir, you need to see this," he called to Admiral Tamin over the communication link. "The returning fleet is sharing their technical knowledge with us. Our ships are actually evolving as we watch." On Luna Command, Captain Sora felt her vessel Earth's Pride transform around her. The hull plating shifted and reformed, creating patterns that resembled flowing water made of metal. Her weapon systems displayed targeting information in three-dimensional holographs that showed enemy positions across multiple dimensions. "Captain, our main guns are showing target locks on ships that don't appear on normal sensors," reported Weapons Officer Kehoe. "Those are probably Confederation vessels that have shifted into parallel space to avoid damage," Sora replied, her enhanced understanding allowing her to grasp concepts that would have been impossible just hours before. "Fire when ready." The buy. Earth Defense Coalition fleet began striking enemies that had thought themselves safely hidden in alternate dimensions. Confederation captains watched in horror as their carefully planned retreat strategies became worthless against weapons that could reach across reality itself. Navigator Prime, Da-Un, coordinated the dimensional assault from her ship dimension, Walker. Her consciousness existed in several realities at once, allowing her to see the battle from perspectives that had no names in human language. When she spoke, her voice echoed from directions that should not exist. Admiral Hyun Woo, the Valkyrie fleet is attempting to create a quantum cascade failure in local space-time. They're trying to collapse this entire region of space rather than admit defeat. Hyun-Woo's transformed mind processed the threat instantly. His neural interfaces connected him directly to every ship in the Black Armada, making him a living computer that could coordinate impossible maneuvers across multiple dimensions. "All ships, implement Protocol 7. We're going to show them what happens when lesser beings try to use predecessor physics." The Black Armada vessels began to move in patterns that made reality bend around them. They didn't just travel through space. They rewrote the fundamental laws that governed how space worked. Gravity became a tool they could sculpt like clay. Time flowed at different rates around their ships, allowing them to attack enemies who were frozen in slow-motion bubbles. Supreme Commander Kithara of the Valkyrie watched her crystalline dreadnoughts fail to damage even a single human vessel. Her weapons passed through Black Armada ships that had shifted into quantum uncertainty states, existing and not existing simultaneously until they chose to become solid. "How is this possible?" she demanded of her science officers. "No species has mastered dimensional warfare to this degree since the predecessors." Her chief scientist, a Valkyrie whose crystal form pulsed with nervous energy, checked his instruments with growing fear. "Commander, these are predecessor technologies. The humans have somehow acquired the lost knowledge of the ancient race. That is impossible. We destroyed the predecessors 50,000 years ago. We made sure no trace of their civilization survived. Apparently, we were wrong." Admiral Veltar of the Hegemony attempted to adapt his bioships to the new threat. The organic vessels grew new sensory organs that could perceive across dimensional boundaries, but even enhanced perception could not help them target enemies that existed in a state of quantum superposition. "Our adaptive systems cannot lock onto the human ships," reported his bioengineer. "They're using some form of probability manipulation. When we fire at them, there's only a small chance they're actually there to be hit." Veltar's ship creature writhed in frustration as its weapons repeatedly struck empty space. "Then we'll destroy everything. If we can't hit them precisely, we'll obliterate this entire region of space." But when the Hegemony fleet fired their most powerful weapons, the energy beams were absorbed by the Black Armada vessels and converted into fuel for their own systems. The human ships fed on the Confederation's attacks, growing stronger with each assault. Engineer Minho worked frantically in his laboratory, trying to understand the flood of information coming from the Black Armada. His equipment showed him blueprints for technologies that could manipulate the building blocks of reality itself. These aren't just weapons, he realized. They're tools for rewriting the fundamental constants of physics. The Black Armada can literally change how the universe works in localized areas. He watched on his screens as Navigator Dayun's squadron demonstrated this power. They flew into a formation of Kavari fighters and simply changed the laws of motion in that region of space. The alien ships found themselves unable to maneuver, trapped in areas where velocity and acceleration had different meanings. Captain Sora led the Earth Defense Coalition fleet in support of the Black Armada, but quickly realized she was witnessing warfare beyond anything in recorded history. Her enhanced sensors showed her ships that existed in 7 dimensions at once, weapons that fired bursts of crystallized time, and defensive systems that created pockets of space where enemy attacks aged into harmlessness before they could hit their targets. "This isn't just advanced technology," she reported to Admiral Tae-min. "They're fighting with the fundamental forces that created the universe." The Confederation fleet found itself completely outmatched. Their weapons could not hit enemies that existed in probability states. Their defensive systems could not protect against attacks that came from directions that had no location in normal space. Their most advanced technologies looked primitive compared to sciences that could rewrite reality at will. Commander Zith Ak of the Kavari attempted to escape with his swarm fleets, but discovered that the Black Armada had created a dimensional barrier around the entire solar system. His ships could not enter hyperspace because hyperspace itself had been modified to reject Confederation vessels. "We are trapped," he reported to the other alien commanders. "The humans have sealed us in normal space." Supreme Commander Kithara made the decision that would determine the fate of both fleets. Rather than accept defeat, she began charging the Valakri's ultimate weapon, a device that could tear holes in the fabric of space-time itself. "If we cannot defeat them, we will. Destroy this entire star system," she announced. Better to eliminate the threat completely than allow predecessor technology to spread. Admiral Hyunwoo detected the energy buildup immediately. His enhanced senses could perceive the quantum fluctuations as the Valkyrie weapon prepared to fire. He opened a communication channel to the entire Confederation fleet. "Valkyrie Commander, you are making a mistake. That weapon will not just destroy this system. It will create a cascade failure that spreads across dozens of star systems. Billions of lives will be lost." "Then you should have surrendered when you had the chance," Kithara replied. But as the Valkyrie weapon charged, something unexpected happened. The crystal consciousness of the original predecessor, still preserved in the quantum matrices of the Black Armada ships, began to speak directly to every mind in the battle. "Children of the Void," the ancient voice whispered across impossible distances. "The time has come to show this galaxy what justice looks like after 50,000 years of waiting." The Black Armada began to move as one, their ships creating formations that existed in mathematics rather than normal space. They were about to demonstrate why the predecessors had once been the most feared and respected civilization in the galaxy, and why the Confederation's ancestors had needed 12 species and centuries of warfare to defeat them the first time. Engineer Minho watched his instruments as the Black Armada prepared to reveal their true power. The energy readings were beyond anything his equipment could measure, showing forces that could reshape entire star systems. "Sir," he reported to Admiral Taemin with awe in his voice, "I think we're about to see what gods look like when they go to war." Navigator Prime Da-Yun felt the ancient consciousness of the predecessors flowing through her transformed mind. Information that had been hidden for 50,000 years suddenly became clear, and she understood the true history of the galaxy. Without hesitation, she opened every communication channel in known space. "People of the galaxy," her voice echoed across thousands of star systems, "you have been lied to for 50 millennia. The Galactic Confederation is not your protector. They are the destroyers of worlds and the killers of civilizations." Across the Confederation fleet, soldiers and officers heard her words with growing alarm. On their home planets, billions of citizens stopped their daily activities to listen. Da-Un's transmission carried more than just words. It included proof. The predecessor memory crystals contained complete records of the galaxy's true history. Images flowed across every screen, showing the systematic destruction of hundreds of species. The Confederation had not spread peace and order throughout the stars. They had spread death and enslavement. "The beings you call predecessors were the last free civilization in the galaxy," Da-Un continued. "They protected smaller species and welcomed diversity. They never conquered anyone. They never enslaved anyone. They defended the weak against the strong." Supreme Commander Kithara tried to cut off the transmission but found that her communication systems were no longer under her control. The Black Armada had taken over every broadcasting network in the galaxy. "Those are lies," she broadcast to her own fleet. "The predecessors were dangerous criminals who threatened galactic stability." But the evidence spoke for itself. The memory crystals showed predecessor cities where dozens of species lived together in harmony. They revealed technologies that created abundance rather than scarcity. Governments that protected individual freedom rather than demanding submission. On Earth, Engineer Minho accessed the historical files through his grandfather's equipment. What he saw made him sick with anger. The Confederation's own records, stolen from their archives by predecessor agents, showed the truth about their expansion across the galaxy. "They didn't just defeat other species," he reported to Admiral Taemin. "They systematically hunted down anyone who wouldn't join their collective, Entire star systems were sterilized. Billions of beings were killed just for wanting to remain independent. The records showed world after world burning under Confederation weapons. Species that refused to submit were labeled as threats to galactic peace and eliminated. The survivors were forced to serve as workers, soldiers, or breeding stock for the Confederation's endless expansion. Admiral Veltar of the Hegemony felt his bioship tremble as the truth flowed through its organic neural networks. His species had joined the Confederation 5,000 years ago, but he had never known the real cost of that alliance. "They made us complicit," he whispered to his officers. "Every battle we fought, every world we helped them conquer, we were participating in genocide." The historical files showed how the Confederation operated. They would approach a new civilization with offers of trade and protection. If the species agreed to join them completely, giving up their independence and unique culture, they were allowed to survive as junior partners. If they refused, they were destroyed. The predecessors had been different. They offered genuine friendship without demanding submission. They shared their advanced technology freely, but never forced anyone to adopt it. They protected smaller civilizations from aggressors, but never tried to rule them. This made them the greatest threat the Confederation had ever faced. Not because the predecessors were warlike, but because they proved that galactic civilization could exist without tyranny. The final war lasted 3 centuries. Dawoon's voice continued across the galaxy. The Confederation attacked with 12 species and millions of ships. The predecessors fought alone, and they nearly won anyway. The memory crystals showed the terrible final battles. Predecessor ships that could manipulate reality itself, fighting against overwhelming numbers. Star systems destroyed in the crossfire. Entire regions of space twisted into impossible shapes by weapons that used the fundamental forces of creation as ammunition. Captain Sora watched the historical records with growing horror. The last predecessor stronghold had held out for 50 years against constant siege. When it finally fell, the Confederation had made sure to execute every surviving predecessor, including their children. They didn't just win the war, she realized. They tried to erase every trace that the predecessors had ever existed. They rewrote history to make themselves look like heroes. But the predecessors had planned for this possibility. Before their civilization fell, they had hidden their knowledge and technology in secret locations throughout the galaxy. They had also preserved the consciousness of their greatest leaders in quantum matrices that could survive for millions of years. "We waited," the ancient predecessor voice whispered through Dawoon's transmission. "We waited for someone worthy to find our legacy and carry on our work. The humans proved themselves worthy when they chose to protect others rather than seek power for themselves." Across the Confederation fleet, soldiers began to question everything they had been taught. The species that served the collective had been told they were part of a great civilization that brought order to chaos. Now they learned they were part of a machine that destroyed freedom wherever it was found. Commander Zithak of the Kavari felt his swarm ships wavering in their formations as the truth reached them. His species had been enslaved for 8,000 years, their individual consciousness suppressed to create perfect unity. For the first time in millennia, individual Kavari began to think for themselves. "We have been tools," one of his pilots transmitted. "We have been weapons in the hands of those who killed our ancestors' independence." Engineer Minho discovered something even more disturbing in the historical files. The Confederation's expansion had not stopped after defeating the predecessors. They had continued to grow, but more carefully, making sure never to face united resistance again. Sir, according to these records, the Confederation has destroyed over 600 civilizations in the last 50,000 years, he reported. They've been systematically eliminating any species that might eventually challenge them. The evidence was overwhelming. Trade wars that led to economic collapse. Diseases introduced to primitive worlds to weaken them before invasion. Puppet governments installed to make conquest look like voluntary membership. But the most chilling discovery was the Confederation's long-term plan. They intended to continue their expansion until every intelligent species in the galaxy was either serving them or extinct. They called it the Great Unity, a future where all life would exist to serve the collective. That's why they're so afraid of humans, Captain Sora realized. We're expanding into space independently. We're proof that species can thrive without joining their collective. Admiral Hyunwoo's voice joined Da-Un's broadcast, speaking from the bridge of the Void Walker. His words carried the authority of someone who had seen the galaxy's hidden truths and chosen to fight for justice. People of the Confederation fleets, he said, you have a choice. You can continue serving a system built on the bones of the innocent, or you can help us build something better. Across the alien Armada, entire ships began to break formation. The crew members of subjugated species realized they had been fighting to preserve their own enslavement. Some vessels powered down their weapons and requested permission to surrender. Others, like Supreme Commander Cathara's crystalline dreadnought, responded with fury. The Valakri had been the primary architects of the galactic genocide, and they would not give up their power without a fight. Destroy the human ships, Kithara ordered her remaining loyal forces. Destroy the evidence. Destroy everything before this poison spreads further. But it was too late. The truth was spreading across the galaxy at the speed of light, carried by the predecessor communication networks that existed outside normal space. Billions of beings were learning that their civilization was built on a foundation of murder and lies. The Black Armada prepared for the final phase of the battle, knowing they faced not just ships and weapons, but the desperate fury of tyrants who had been exposed to their victims. The galaxy would never be the same. The Confederation fleet was breaking apart as the truth spread through their ranks. Entire squadrons of Kavari fighters turned against their commanders as individual consciousness returned to the swarm species. Hegemony bioships refused to follow orders, their organic neural networks rejecting commands that contradicted their newly awakened moral understanding. But Supreme Commander Cathara still commanded the loyalty of the Valakri core fleet, and Admiral Veltar maintained control over his most fanatical bioships. They would not surrender their galactic empire without a final desperate battle. Captain Sora watched the chaos from Luna Command and made a decision that would change her life forever. Sir, request permission to join the Black Armada in direct combat. Admiral Taman frowned. Captain, your ship isn't equipped with predecessor technology. You'd be destroyed in seconds against those weapons. Not if I undergo emergency integration, Sora replied. Engineer Minho has been studying the process. The predecessor consciousness can enhance human minds and bodies to interface directly with their technology. The process was dangerous and irreversible. Many of the original colonists had died attempting the transformation 30 years ago. Those who survived became something more than human, but they could never return to their original forms. The integration process is extremely painful, Minho warned from his laboratory deep in Luna Command. Your entire nervous system will be restructured. Your brain will be expanded to process information in mathematical languages. Your body will be modified to survive in environments that would kill a normal human. Sora looked out at Earth, where billions of people waited to learn if humanity would survive or die. Do it. The transformation chamber had been built from predecessor technology found in Minho's grandfather's laboratory. Strange crystals hummed with energy as they prepared to rewrite Sora's biological structure at the quantum level. Captain, once this process begins, there's no going back, Minho said as he initiated the sequence. You'll still be you, but you'll also be something the galaxy has never seen before. Sora stepped into the chamber as energy flowed around her. The pain was beyond anything she had ever experienced. Her bones reformed, becoming stronger and lighter. Her nervous system grew new pathways that could process information at superhuman speeds. Her eyes changed, gaining the ability to see across multiple dimensions simultaneously. But the worst part was the expansion of her consciousness. Knowledge from 50,000 years of predecessor civilization flooded into her mind. She saw the rise and fall of countless species, the beauty of lost worlds, and the terrible truth about what the Confederation had destroyed. When the transformation was complete, Captain Sora was no longer entirely human. Her skin had a metallic sheen, and her eyes glowed with inner fire. When she spoke, her voice carried harmonics that made reality shiver around the edges. Integration successful, she reported, her enhanced mind already interfacing with the ship's systems. All systems responding to direct neural control. Her vessel, Earth's Pride, began to change as predecessor technology flowed through its hull. The metal restructured itself into patterns that existed in multiple dimensions. Weapon systems appeared that could fire bursts of crystallized time and gravity waves shaped like cutting blades. Admiral Hyun-woo welcomed her transformation through the quantum communication network that connected all enhanced humans. Welcome to the Black Armada, sister. Now you'll understand what we've been fighting for all these years. Sora joined the final assault on the Confederation's core fleet. Her enhanced perception allowed her to see the battle from perspectives that had no names in human language. She could observe enemy movements before they happened, predict strategies before they were formed, and coordinate attacks across multiple dimensions simultaneously. The remaining Valkyrie fleet fought with the desperation of tyrants who knew their time was ending. Supreme Commander Kithara activated weapons that tore holes in space-time itself, creating gravitational anomalies that could crush planets. But Navigator Da-Un had learned to navigate through folded space during her 30 years in the void. She led her squadron through dimensional gaps that should not exist, emerging inside the Valkyrie formation to strike at their command ships from impossible directions. Kithara, this is your final warning. Admiral Hyun-woo broadcast to the Crystalline. Commander, surrender now, or face the full power of the predecessor legacy. I will never surrender to inferior beings, Kithara replied, her crystal form flashing with rage. If I cannot rule this galaxy, then I will destroy it. She activated the Valkyrie's ultimate weapon, a device that could create chain reactions in the quantum foam underlying reality itself. If successful, it would cause a cascade failure that would spread across hundreds of star systems, destroying everything in its path. Captain Sora felt the weapon charging through her enhanced senses. The energy buildup was enormous, drawing power from the fundamental forces that held the universe together. In seconds, it would fire and begin the destruction of entire regions of space. But she had an idea that only a mind enhanced with predecessor knowledge could conceive. Instead of trying to stop the weapon, she would redirect its energy through the dimensional barriers that separated parallel realities. All ships form predecessor formation delta, she ordered the Black Armada. We're going to turn their ultimate weapon against itself. The Black Armada ships moved into a pattern that existed in mathematics rather than normal space. Their hulls began to resonate with frequencies that matched the quantum foam underlying reality. When Kithara's weapon fired, instead of destroying local space-time, the energy was channeled through the dimensional formation and redirected back at the Valkyrie fleet. The result was spectacular and terrible. Kithara's own ultimate weapon struck her command ship, creating a localized time loop that trapped the vessel in an eternal moment of destruction. The crystalline dreadnought began to age rapidly, its hull crumbling as thousands of years passed in seconds. Admiral Veltar attempted to retreat with his remaining bioships, but found that the Black Armada had sealed all escape routes. His organic vessels writhed in panic as they realized they were trapped with enemies who could manipulate the fundamental laws of physics. "This is Captain Sora to all Confederation forces," she broadcast, her enhanced voice carrying across impossible distances. "Your commanders have fallen. Your ultimate weapons have failed. You have one choice: surrender or share their fate." Across the alien fleet, the remaining ships began to power down their weapons. The crew members of enslaved species had learned the truth about their civilization and refused to continue fighting for tyrants. Even some Valkyrie vessels surrendered rather than face the same temporal destruction that had claimed their commander. But the victory came with a terrible cost. Sora felt the strain of using predecessor technology at full power. Her transformed body was strong, but channeling forces that could reshape reality was taking its toll. Energy crackled around her as her enhanced nervous system struggled to process the enormous power flows. "Captain, your biosigns are critical," reported Minho from Luna Command. "The quantum integration is putting too much stress on your cellular structure." Sora smiled, energy sparking around her transformed features. "The price of evolution is always high, but someone has to pay it." Navigator Dayun's ship appeared beside Earth's Pride, and her dimensional consciousness reached out to support Sora's failing systems. "You're not alone in this, sister. We share the burden together." Admiral Hyunwoo joined them, his mind linking with theirs through the quantum network. "This is what the predecessors died for. The right of all species to evolve and grow without fear of tyrants." Together, the enhanced humans coordinated the final phase of the battle. The scattered Confederation forces were contained within dimensional barriers, unable to escape or call for reinforcements. The galaxy's greatest empire had been defeated by 50,000 colonists who had chosen transformation over submission. But even as they celebrated victory, they knew the real work was just beginning. The Confederation's defeat would create a power vacuum across hundreds of star systems. Billions of enslaved beings would need help learning to govern themselves after millennia of oppression. And somewhere in the deep void, other threats might be stirring, attracted by the quantum disturbances of the battle. Captain Sora looked at her transformed reflection in the ship's display and accepted what she had become. She was no longer fully human, but she was something new and necessary. A guardian of freedom in a galaxy that had almost forgotten what freedom meant. The price of evolution was indeed high, but the alternative was extinction or eternal slavery. She chose evolution. The final confrontation took place not in normal space, but across 7 dimensions simultaneously. Supreme Commander Cathera, trapped in her time loop prison, made one last desperate attempt to destroy everything rather than accept defeat. Using the last of her ship's power, she tried to trigger a quantum cascade that would unravel the fabric of space-time itself. Captain Sora felt the cascade beginning through her enhanced senses. Reality started to buckle around Earth's solar system as the fundamental forces that held matter together began to fail. If the cascade reached critical mass, it would spread throughout the galaxy, destroying everything in its path. "All ships, emergency formation," Admiral Hyun-woo commanded through the quantum network. "We need to contain the cascade before it spreads beyond local space." The Black Armada moved with perfect coordination, their transformed crews thinking as one across multiple dimensions. But containing a quantum cascade required more power than even their predecessor technology could generate alone. That's when engineer Minho made a breakthrough in his laboratory, working with equipment that his grandfather had hidden for 30 years. He discovered that Earth itself was built on a foundation of dormant predecessor technology. "Sir, the planet is responding to our quantum signals," he reported to Admiral Tae-min. "There are crystalline structures buried in Earth's core that have been sleeping for millions of years. The predecessors chose this world as a backup site for their most important technology." Deep beneath Earth's surface, ancient machines awakened from their eons-long slumber. The planet's magnetic field began to resonate with frequencies that predated the formation of the solar system. Energy flowed up from the core, offering itself to the humans who had proven worthy of the predecessor legacy. Navigator Da-un coordinated the planetary interface from her ship Dimension Walker. Her consciousness, already existing in multiple realities, expanded to encompass the entire solar system. She became a living bridge between Earth's hidden power and the Black Armada's desperate need. "I can feel them," she whispered, her voice echoing across impossible distances. The predecessor consciousness preserved in Earth's quantum matrix. They've been waiting so long for someone to carry on their work. The combination of planetary power and predecessor technology created something the galaxy had never seen. Captain Sora led the effort to weave a quantum containment field around Cathara's cascade using forces that existed beyond normal physics. But the strain was enormous. Sora's transformed body began to break down as she channeled power that could reshape entire star systems. Energy crackled around her failing nervous system, and her enhanced consciousness started to fragment across multiple dimensions. "Captain, you need to stop," Admiral Hyun-woo warned through their neural link. "The power flows are exceeding safe parameters." "There are no safe parameters for saving a galaxy," Sora replied, her voice now speaking from several realities at once. "This is what we evolved for." Working together, the enhanced humans wove the cascade into a stable pattern that transformed destruction into creation. Instead of unraveling reality, the quantum energies were channeled into a new type of space-time structure that could serve as a foundation for galactic peace. The process changed them all. When it was over, the crew of the Black Armada existed as much in the quantum realm as in normal space. They had become something that transcended individual existence while remaining distinctly human in their values and goals. Supreme Commander Cathara's ship finally broke free from its time loop, but the crystalline commander found herself facing opponents who had evolved beyond her ability to comprehend. Her weapons could not harm beings who existed in probability states, and her strategies were meaningless against minds that could think in mathematical languages older than her civilization. "This is impossible," she transmitted, her crystal form dim with defeat. "No species can master predecessor technology so quickly." "We didn't master it," Captain Sora replied, her consciousness now distributed across multiple ships and dimensions. "We joined with it. We became part of something larger while remaining ourselves." The surrender of the Confederation's core fleet marked the end of 10,000 years of galactic tyranny. But Admiral Hyun Woo knew that victory was only the beginning. Across hundreds of star systems, enslaved species were breaking free from their oppressors. The power vacuum left by the Confederation's collapse could lead to chaos if not handled carefully. "All liberated species," he broadcast across the galaxy, "you have a choice. You can try to rebuild the old system of domination, or you can help us create something new." Navigator Da Yun established the terms of the new galactic order from her quantum-distributed consciousness. The compact of free worlds would be based on cooperation rather than conquest, diversity rather than unity, protection rather than domination. "Any species that chooses independence will be protected," she announced. "Any civilization that threatens others will face the guardians of the void." The Black Armada divided into smaller fleets, each one taking responsibility for protecting a region of the galaxy. They would patrol the deep spaces between stars, watching for signs of new tyrants or returning Confederation loyalists. Engineer Min Ho coordinated the technological sharing program from his laboratory on Earth. The predecessor knowledge would be offered freely to any species that chose to use it for peaceful purposes. But the most powerful technologies would remain in the hands of the enhanced humans, who had proven they could use godlike power without becoming gods themselves. "We'll teach anyone who wants to learn," he announced to the galaxy. "But we'll also make sure that no one uses this knowledge to enslave others." Captain Sora took command of the home fleet, the ships that would remain in Earth's solar system to protect humanity's birth world. Her consciousness existed partially in normal space and partially in the quantum realm, where the predecessor legacy continued to grow and evolve. Young humans began volunteering for the transformation process, ready to join the Eternal Watch in the deep void. They understood the price of evolution, but they also understood the necessity. Someone had to guard the galaxy against the return of tyranny. The first class of new guardians included volunteers from across Earth's diverse population. They came from every nation and culture, united by their willingness to sacrifice their purely human existence for the protection of freedom throughout the galaxy. "The transformation will change you in ways you cannot imagine," Sora warned the volunteers. "You will gain power that gods would envy, but you will also take on responsibilities that will last for millennia." "We understand," replied volunteer Jin-A, a young engineer from New Seoul. "Our ancestors built ships to carry humans to the stars. We'll become the ships that carry justice to those who need it." As the new Guardians underwent their transformations, the Black Armada prepared for its next mission. Somewhere in the deep void between galaxies, other threats might be stirring. Ancient powers that had slept while the Confederation ruled might awaken now that the old order was broken. Admiral Hyun Woo stood on the bridge of the Void Walker and looked out at the infinite darkness beyond the galactic rim. His enhanced senses could detect faint quantum signatures in the deep void, hints of civilizations so old that they predated the predecessors themselves. "The galaxy is free," he said to his crew of transformed humans. "But freedom must be defended. We'll patrol the deep dark and make sure that no new tyrants rise to threaten the peace." Navigator Da-Un's consciousness touched his across the quantum network. And if other beings like us exist out there, other species that have evolved beyond normal limitations, then we'll judge them by their actions, not their power, Hyun-Woo replied. The predecessor legacy teaches us that true strength comes from protecting the weak, not dominating them. The Black Armada began its long journey into the void, fading from normal space as they shifted into dimensions that had no names. They carried with them the promise that had been made 50,000 years ago by the last free civilization in the galaxy. No species would be forced to kneel. No civilization would be destroyed for choosing independence. No tyrant would rule unchallenged. While the Guardians of the Void maintained their eternal watch, humanity had evolved beyond their physical limitations. But they had not forgotten their humanity. They had become something the galaxy desperately needed. Protectors who served justice rather than power. Guardians who defended freedom rather than enforcing submission. The age of the Confederation was over. The age of the Guardians had begun, and in the deep spaces between the stars, enhanced humans stood watch over a galaxy, learning to be free, ensuring that the darkness would never again be allowed to consume the light of independent worlds and diverse civilizations. The compact was sealed, not in words carved in stone, but in the quantum consciousness of beings who had chosen to become eternal guardians of galactic peace. They would patrol the void until the stars burned out, and beyond, if necessary. For they had learned the greatest truth of all, that those with the power to rule have the responsibility to serve, and that the highest evolution of any